All right, so we're going to rock out John 8:31 and 32. I guess technically you could say John 8:31 through 32, but it's just two. So words are hard. It's just going to be those two. So I'm going to read them for you real quick. To all who believed him, Jesus said, "If you hold to my teachings, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." I'm going to read that again because there's parts of it that make really a lot of sense, and there's parts of it that seem sing-song-y, but we can't gloss past this. So I'm going to read it again. To those who believe, Jesus said, "If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Now, from a surface level, my assumption is you hear that verse and you're like, oh yeah, we're talking about truths and myths. That totally makes sense. You're clever, Jeremy. But beyond that, there is so much depth in these two verses that we genuinely need to embrace before we can even move on to talking about the myths. So let's talk about this, right? When it comes to weight loss, I've said multiple times that we face three very specific challenges all at the same time. We have conflicts that are external, we have conflicts that are internal, and we have conflicts that are philosophical. And so, as a quick recap, external conflicts, nutrition and exercise. Those are the conflicts. What do we eat? How do we eat? Wow, all that. Same with exercise. I love it. I hate it. I don't want to sweat. Do I do a bike? Do I do a lit? All that stuff. Internally is where it starts to get real, though, because the internal conflicts are the things that we have that either block us from doing the external solutions, or they're perpetual realms of sabotage that keep us from even accepting that the external solutions are solutions, and everything in between. I mean, we could do a marathon of just internal conflicts. But the thing is as soon as I say that, I know you guys all, and myself included, we all go, yep, that's what I do to sabotage. That's what so we all know that we have these internal conflicts. But beyond that, where I feel we make the least amount of progress is quite often when we struggle, we never address philosophically who God is to us in the internal conflicts. And so we're asking for all this power beyond our own, but we're cutting off the supply line to the only one who can provide that. So the philosophical conflict is really, who is God to me? Do I genuinely believe all that he says he is and can do? Because if you don't, then one has to make the argument that the internal conflicts will just rise and fall as your emotions do, which means the external solutions will only be dependent on how you feel that day, which is no way to live, especially when you're trying to make progress. So the reason why I want to start with this verse and with the philosophical standpoint of who God is to really unpack this. Because what I would say is, beyond all of the benefits that weight loss affords us, whether it's looking good in your little booty shorts or the ability to just walk up and down stairs, to be able to look down and not have that second or third chin. Like, there's so many things that weight loss affords us, but beyond that, I would make the argument, and I guess I am, that the truest blessing is knowing that we're being good stewards with what God has given us, which to me would almost be the definition of disciples. So to really understand how we're starting this, you have to ask yourself, am I really letting the peace and the love and the grace of Jesus Christ infiltrate my thought process? And if you're not, then the truth doesn't matter, because there's going to be anti-truth that comes in that could easily persuade you, which we're going to unpack in a couple minutes. But if you're not putting your understanding of truth upon the rock of Christ, then you're just going to kind of, it becomes the foundation analogy, right? It becomes the parable of just, are you in sand? Are you on rock? Like, how are you building your foundations? And so the reason why I want to start here is when we start to unpack the myths, a lot of us are going to have experience bias. This was made, like, I knew this, and this is funny. This is why I love working with all you guys, ladies, individuals, that as much as I feel, hopefully, I teach you, you also teach me. Because I was having this conflict recently over the past month where I would find myself repeating myself and having people have revelations of things that I said months ago. And people would be like, this is mind-blowing, Jeremy. And I'm like, I know. I felt that way 6 months ago when I told you. And like, I understand it with my 5 and my 8-year-old because I know that they don't listen to me. But I expect you guys to at least pay attention to some degree. And so what I learned from that, and I don't even want to say learn, but what I was reminded of, and I say this quite often in other realms of this journey, is we're undoing, and just take me for example, 38 years of programming. That's a lot to undo. Plus, the weight loss industry is a $48 billion a year industry. So people are paying a lot of money to have you buy into whatever they're selling, and quite often they're warping the truth just enough to make you feel inadequate. So you buy the product. Why is this important? Because at the core, if we don't look at this through the lens of truth and with Christ being the absolute truth, then we allow ourselves to be vulnerable to the next clever marketing campaign. And I feel that every single one of us is worth more than just marketing dollars. So to really embrace the concept of knowing the truth and letting it set you free is to draw a line in the sand and not necessarily say, forget everything you know, because some of what you know might be useful. But be completely open to the potential fact that a lot of what you've believed is either incorrect or it served you at a time that now doesn't serve you. And that's important because when you think of things in terms of the automotive industry, quite often they'll upgrade a car. But more often than not, they'll release a new model. And that is what I believe a lot of us have to look at when it comes to our health and wellness. Not necessarily making our old selves better, but truly embracing what a new identity in Christ looks like. And we've got to start there, because if we don't, then we're never going to have the mental bandwidth to actually go through the internal struggles. Because it's only the grace of God that will give us the mental sanity to look at the things that we consider deficiencies and move past them. Because if we trust God's word, then these aren't deficiencies. These are just opportunities to be redeemed and get grown. I'm sure there's a better way to phrase that. But yeah, y'all need to get grown up in here. Words are hard. This coffee is still full. Ergo. So we start here. Because if we don't, then all of this is maybe good information, but it's clickbait. And my goal is not to give you clickbait. My goal is for you to go, there's some truth there. And when you compound that truth through the lens of what is true in my walk with God, then maybe it requires a different perspective. So knowing that, I feel, or at least I hope, that we're able to start going through, and I just pulled out the top 10. What's fun is we could do one of these like every month because there's so much misinformation out there. And maybe we'll have a secondary disclaimer because some of the information that you read may be very applicable to other people. But the problem is I would say that most of us aren't trying to get like 18-pack abs. We're just simply trying to lose weight and get healthier. So, if you see crazy athlete X doing this, they may not be wrong. But if your end goal is not to be crazy athlete X, then following their methods might hurt you more than it helps you. So always keep that in mind. So that's gonna be like the bonus thought process here. Like whenever you read a study, or whenever you read an article, or whenever you see empirical information about a topic, please remember who is providing it. Quite often, if it's a school, it's strictly educational. Those are great places to learn. However, if it's like, this pharmaceutical company said that this drug's amazing, well, of course that pharmaceutical company says that. Like, they paid for the study to sell you more drugs. So just remember the information. So this isn't Jeremy saying, hey, only listen to Jeremy. No, this is Jeremy saying that as you go along your internet day, just remember who you're reading, right? And I see this a lot with a lot of the ladies. So stay-at-home mom who has 8 hours to just meal prep and do exercise, her perspective on what's possible is going to be a lot different than the working mom with 3 kids and like just trying to keep it together. Now, the words may be true, but the mom who can just literally stay at home and have their best life shown on social media has a lot going for them that the common person doesn't. So just remember the context of the information you're reading. All right. We could just call this episode disclaimers. But with that being said, let's move on. So, boom! Myth number 1. Let's bust it. You are not strong enough. That is a lie. You are plenty strong. But here's where it gets weird. To get overweight, a lot of us build up a level of comfort in that lifestyle. What is the opposite of comfort? Discomfort. Most of us don't like discomfort. I'm sorry. Anytime growth or change happens, there's discomfort. Ironically, we all understand that, because even as we grow, so metaphorically that's true, but physically as we grow, our pants don't grow with us. So there's that awkward time where our pants don't grow with us, but we kind of grow our belly over the pants. That's discomfort. So wow, that analogy worked on both levels. But the point in all of this is that anytime there's growth, there's discomfort. And because quite often we use food as a narcotic and it's used for comfort, anything that takes us out of that comfort zone, we start to assign other words. I'm not strong enough. I'm not enough. I can't do it. I don't have the courage. You do. But you're human and you don't like discomfort. And that's okay. But you also have to acknowledge that to grow, you've got to do things differently. You've got to embrace some discomforts that you've not had the past few years or decades, however long your struggle is. Because if you can think back, to the mothers, you can't say you're not strong enough. You've birthed a kid. So that's wrong. If you've ever rehabbed any type of surgery, you're strong enough. If you've ever overcome or even addressed a trauma in your life, you're strong enough. I can make tons of cases and show you how in other places you are more than strong enough. But because this is so personal, we tend to use that as an easy out. And we want to surround ourselves, because misery loves company, by saying I'm just not strong enough. And yeah, I could pull up the Bible verse of God only gives you what you can handle, but from a practical manner, there are times in your life where you've overcome more things than this. You can overcome this. You just have to acknowledge it's going to be uncomfortable in certain places, but that's okay, because that's where progress happens. So myth number 1 that just got punched in the face is that you're not strong enough, because each and every one of you are strong enough. Number 2 on this list is, well, if I'm going to die anyways, does it actually matter? Yes. Yes, it matters. Because beyond just having life, there's a quality of life that's afforded to you. We're not just put on this earth to work, pay taxes, love Jesus, and die. We're not. There's so much, and cliche, I'm sorry. We're meant to thrive. Like, we're not just here to survive. Like, this is not just put your head down, hope for the best, wait for death to happen. Life is magical. Life is beautiful. Life is wonderful. And if you're not experiencing that right now, then one has to ask the question, what about it is giving you that perspective? And more importantly, how much of an active participant can you be in changing that? I spoke with a gentleman yesterday who was just having a Chicken Little sky is falling moment because during the pandemic, lost about 30% of their staff and they got a new puppy. And so all of the time he used to have gone. And what is typically the first thing to go when life happens? Your health and wellness routines. And so he gained some weight. And we were just having this conversation about, like, if we're able to take the emotion out of it, which is very hard, but if we were just to do it, what could we actually do tomorrow that would make an impact? Well, we learned that his schedule hasn't changed. Yes, he has more work within the confines of his schedule, but he's still 8 to 4. Okay. Well, he was 8 to 4 before, so he can control that. What we also learned, frustratingly, was that the puppy made him wake up an hour earlier. My question to him was, well, if you have to entertain the puppy for an hour, can you do it on your terms where you go for a walk or even maybe you start jogging? He never thought of that. He was so focused on the fact that he was losing this hour of sleep that he didn't realize, well, if I just take the hour of cardio I was doing at night, flip it to the morning, since I have to be up anyways, and all of a sudden what we did was we, non-emotionally, started chipping away, not at what he couldn't control. He couldn't control that they got a new puppy. You're not just going to ban the puppy. You're not just going to let him cry all morning. Like, you're not going to do that. But he could control how he entertained that puppy. He could do it in a way that allowed him to get exercise. And so when you're able to frame your perspective in what is possible, you'll find that a lot more is possible. And why does all this matter? Well, because at the end of the day, one, we're not just here to die, but two, if we're genuinely called to go forth and make disciples, and we're living in a way that inhibits that, then there's going to be unhealthy tension in your life because you're not living the life that God has called you to. And that's not fun. That's frustrating. So why do that? So for me, myth number 2, that we just punch in the face. Well, apparently this is the sign, like, busted. Don't make a meme out of this. But is it doesn't matter, because it does. Because not only is this your story and you're worth it, but collectively we're part of a greater story that we're helping write as a part of the kingdom. So myth number 2 that was busted is that it doesn't matter. Myth number 3, this is fun because there's science and Jesus involved. You just need more willpower. So here's a fun fact. Much like this water bottle, your willpower, there's only so much of it. It gets used up during the day in ways that don't involve weight loss. So let's say you're dealing with a stressful coworker or a stressful employee or a stressful relative. That, to not have choice words with that individual, uses up willpower. Let's say you're not happy with your living situation and you're like, got an access panel that needs completed. Again, willpower. So for those individuals who tend to put off exercise or tend to put off preparing things, they're putting themselves at a huge disadvantage because by the time they get around to things, scientifically, they actually do have less willpower. And it's hard to just make up more willpower. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is when you have the most willpower, you make the choices and then you simply follow through. So like if your day would afford it and you're able to exercise, like let's just use exercise for example. If you're able to exercise in the morning rather than exercise at the night, scientifically, you are statistically setting yourself up for more opportunity for success because you're doing it at a time where you have more willpower. So this is where, honestly, the concept of losing weight smarter came from, was because to some degree, we've got to outthink ourselves. You know, we've got to know these are our triggers. How do we avoid them? These are positive triggers. How do we stay encouraged with them? How do we schedule things to a place that we don't box ourselves into a corner and we don't get things done and then we feel like a failure, which then perpetuates coping in X, Y, and Z, because you only have so much willpower. So myth number 3 that's getting busted, sadly, because it'd be nice if there's just like a willpower supplement, like just go to GNC, like I'd like some more willpower in like a chewy form, maybe like a fruit punch flavor if you have it. That doesn't exist. And because that doesn't exist, we've got to operate smarter and put ourselves into the most successful situations that we can, knowing we've only got so much willpower and we can't create more. It gets replenished when you sleep, when you rest, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But you can't create more willpower, which hopefully should give you freedom, because people will look at me and be like, oh, Jeremy, if I just had more willpower like you, I'd be amazing. I have the same amount of willpower as you. But what I've done is I've said, how do I protect myself from the things that will help me? How do I protect myself from the things where I'm vulnerable? And how do I extrapolate the things that will lead to success? That's the only difference between me and someone who's not successful, is I've given the foresight to say, how do I prep ahead so I'm successful? Because when willpower is at its worst, how do I not cave? And, you know, you guys have done this amazingly, and there have been struggles, but a lot of people will exercise in the morning because they know if they don't do it at night, they won't. Other individuals will put healthy snacks in their car so that if they can't eat, or if they're going to be out for 8 hours, they're not forced to go eat out, which is typically a less than ideal situation for a lot of us. You know, just you wake up and you take a cooler. You wake up and maybe take something that's not going to be heat sensitive. You do that whenever you have the most willpower, so that whenever you get to the point where you have the least, you're set for success. So that's going to be number 3. You need more willpower. That is a lie. You just need to outsmart yourself, which is totally doable because you're smart enough to be here watching it. So if you've made it this far, you are more than smart enough to do it. Number 4 that we're going to bust. This is a fast process. It's not. Nope. That's where the marketing comes in. Here's where right, this is what's frustrating, right? There's always enough truth in a lie to make you start to believe it. Because weight loss could be fast if you do it in a healthy and unsustainable way. But I would suggest none of us just want to lose weight. I would suggest that all of us want to be done with this roller coaster. That's where we've got to understand that we are turning the tides of things that we've learned that we have to unlearn. We've got to unlearn certain behaviors to learn new behaviors. But part of that, much like my daughter who's starting to ride a bike, she's going to have awkward moments with the training wheels. And she's got to do training wheels before she goes and she just starts BMXing. And we accept that in the biking world. So why don't we accept that truth when it comes to this? I mean, if you've ever been to a retail store, you know there's a manager, but you also know there's an assistant manager. Why is there an assistant manager? Because it takes time to become a manager. You've got to learn what it takes to actually manage. So anyone who's an assistant manager understands that things take time. And we accept that in retail. Why don't we accept it here? Anything in your life, 4-year degree, 2-year degree, 6-month certification. Everything that is worth doing takes time, especially when you're learning new things. So I'm going to bust this myth in the face again. This is not a fast process because you're doing so much more than just losing weight. You're finding your identity. You're understanding your identity in Christ. You're overcoming the narrative that you've had in your head for so long that have kept you in this place. And this is before we even get to the cupboard. So, weight loss will take time. That's okay. Be encouraged that progress will always beat perfection. So that's the fourth myth. Fifth myth that we're going to bust today: all calories are the same. They are not the same. In fact, all meats aren't the same. Like straight up chicken breast versus chicken sausage. Even that's, but it's chicken. Yeah, but it's not though. It's the quality of the chicken. So this is why it's so much more than just, I'm going to track my calories. And this was one of the things that changed my life when I was in high school, because I had the revelation where I could have 300 calories of Mountain Dew, or I could have a sandwich with grapes and carrots and water and have an entire lunch. Which one made the most sense? So number 5, not all calories are created the same. We're going to do 2 more, so I don't want to run too long. I want to make sure that we've got time for questions if there are any. So we'll do 2 more, and then here's the fun fact. We'll just do another one of these soon because there's still so many more myths to bust. So here's where it is. 2 more. You ready? Awesome. Exercise has to be extreme for it to work. I'm going to punch that in the face. I get credit or complaints, depending on what your perspective is, on how consistent I am. That is the truth behind anything. Is 30 minutes a day of anything is going to be more beneficial than nothing, 3 hours. Because you've got to think about the long tail effect of it. When you're doing 30 minutes a day of anything, you are in the present moment of that activity. Also, if we're going to make this specific to exercise, your body is going to handle 30 minutes a lot better than it will 3 hours. Also, you give yourself the mental freedom to not feel like a failure if you miss one day because you know tomorrow's going to happen. A lot of us look at things like American Ninja Warrior or CrossFit or insert person moving a tire that's way too big for a human to be moving because they have machinery for that. Exercise doesn't have to be extreme. Exercise just has to be done. And the important thing is do something you love. So for me, I'm probably not going to lift weights over the summer. That's okay because I'm playing hockey 3 to 4 times a week. I love it. That's exercise. That's amazing. Do what you love. And if you are having a hard time, find a way to incorporate what you love into your exercise. If you hate treadmills, but it's cold and rainy, but you love listening to audiobooks, listen to audiobooks on the treadmill. If you hate going to gyms, but you love walking outside, walk outside. Because exercise doesn't have to be extreme. But in this equation of health and wellness, it does need to be done. So I'm going to punch that in the face. The myth that exercise has to be extreme for weight loss. It doesn't have to be extreme. It just needs to be done. And last, but not least, number 7. 7's a holy number. Carbs are of the devil. Carbohydrates are not. Like, is there anyone in the world who has worse PR than carbohydrates? Yes, 3 is a holy number as well. It is true. It's the magic number. Schoolhouse Rocks says so. Anyways, carbs are not of the devil. There are, though, however, types of carbohydrates which are the worst decision possible when it comes to wanting to lose weight. But we forget that carbohydrates are naturally occurring in fruits and vegetables. But when we think of carbohydrates, we think of like pizza and pancakes and pretzels. And yes, those are completely useless. So those aren't great. They have no caloric value and they make you feel lethargic. Those are the types of carbohydrates we should avoid. However, naturally occurring carbohydrates from fruits and vegetables, those are amazing. In fact, here's a fun fact. Carbohydrates are your body's first source of energy. That's a true story. The biggest challenge that a lot of us face, though, is most of us do not use the type of carbohydrates that our body can use up quickly enough so they get metabolized as fat, things like potatoes and pastas and those refined things. So, to recap that, myth number 7 that we're busting: carbohydrates are not of the devil. Carbohydrates are amazing. However, the ones that you should use would be dependent on what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to lose weight, then you should avoid a lot of the refined carbohydrates. So a lot of the breads and the starches and the sweet carbohydrates. Avoid them. Try to cut them out as much as possible because they're just going to metabolize as fat. And if your whole point is to lose fat, putting more fat in you doesn't seem to make sense. So those are the 7 myths we're going to bust today. We'll come back with more myths later because there are so many more myths that we could uncover. But what we'll do is we'll end with a prayer, and then we'll see if there's any questions. So let us do that. Lord God, thank you so much